When she loves you but avoids you, it can feel confusing, painful, and emotionally exhausting because love is usually associated with closeness, communication, and warmth. Yet avoidance sends the opposite signal, and this contradiction often has deeper psychological and emotional roots that are rarely talked about. Sometimes her avoidance is not a lack of love, but a sign of how deeply she feels, because strong emotions can trigger fear of vulnerability, fear of rejection, fear of losing control, or fear of being hurt again, especially if she has past experiences of betrayal, abandonment, or emotional neglect, and instead of moving closer, she subconsciously creates distance as a form of self-protection. In many cases, she avoids you because being around you makes her emotions overwhelming. Her heart races, her thoughts spiral, and she doesn't know how to regulate what she feels. So, silence and distance become her coping mechanism. She may worry that if she shows her true feelings, she will appear weak, needy, or exposed. So she hides behind cold behavior, delayed replies, or emotional withdrawal, even though internally she thinks about you constantly. Avoidance can also come from internal conflict, where she wants you deeply but believes she is not good enough, not ready, or not deserving of love, leading her to push you away before you can do it first. Sometimes she avoids you because she senses the connection is real and meaningful, and real love carries responsibility, commitment, and the possibility of change, which can be terrifying for someone who values emotional safety over emotional risk. In other situations, cultural conditioning, family expectations, or societal pressure may teach her that expressing love openly is unsafe or inappropriate, so she chooses distance as a socially acceptable mask. Her avoidance may also be a test, not in a manipulative sense, but as an unconscious way to see if you will remain consistent, patient, and emotionally stable even when she pulls back, because consistency feels safer than intensity to someone who has been hurt before. It's also possible that she avoids you because she is trying to fight her feelings, especially if loving you complicates her life, challenges her plans, or conflicts with other responsibilities, and instead of confronting the complexity, she chooses silence. Importantly, avoidance does not always mean she doesn't care, but it does mean she is struggling internally, and that struggle can manifest as mixed signals: hot hand, cold behavior, or emotional distance. However, it's equally important to recognize that while understanding her reasons can build empathy, it does not mean you should ignore your own emotional needs or accept indefinite confusion, because love that avoids communication can slowly erode self-worth and emotional security. Healthy love requires clarity, effort, and mutual vulnerability, and if avoidance becomes a pattern rather than a temporary phase, it may indicate unresolved attachment issues or emotional unavailability that she must be willing to work on herself. The key is not to chase, beg, or over-explain, because that often reinforces the avoidance dynamic, but instead to remain calm, grounded, and self-respecting, allowing space, while also setting emotional boundaries. If she truly loves you, space combined with emotional maturity can create safety for her to return and open up. But if she continues to avoid without effort or honesty, it may be a sign that love alone is not enough without emotional readiness. Understanding this dynamic helps you stop personalizing her distance, stop questioning your worth, and start seeing avoidance as information rather than rejection, empowering you to decide whether you want to wait, communicate clearly, or walk away with dignity, because real love should eventually move toward connection, not permanent distance, and you deserve a relationship where affection is expressed openly, not hidden behind silence. When she loves you but continues to avoid you, the second layer of this dynamic often reveals itself in subtle behaviors rather than words. Because avoidance is rarely loud, it lives in pauses, in mischances, in emotions left unsaid. You may notice that she watches your stories but never replies, listens carefully when you speak but never shares her own feelings, remembers small details about you yet acts distant when you're face to face, and this Contradiction can feel like emotional whiplash, but it usually means her heart is involved while her mind is trying to stay in control. Deep down, she may believe that loving you gives you power over her emotions, and for someone who has learned to survive by staying emotionally independent, that loss of control feels dangerous, so she creates distance to regain balance. Sometimes she avoids you because she is waiting for the right moment to feel safe enough to open up, not realizing that the longer she waits, the heavier the silence becomes. In her inner world, she may rehearse conversations with you, imagine future moments, and feel jealousy at the thought of losing you, yet still choose distance because acting on love feels more risky than fantasizing about it. There are also moments when avoidance is tied to guilt. She may feel that she cannot give you what you deserve emotionally, mentally, or in terms of commitment, and instead of being honest, she disappears to avoid disappointing you. This kind of avoidance often comes from an anxious or fearful attachment style, where love triggers both desire and fear at the same time, creating a push-pull cycle that confuses both people involved. For you, this can create self-doubt, overthinking, and the urge to analyze every small interaction. But it's important to understand that her avoidance is about her internal battle, not your value. However, love that stays trapped inside fear cannot grow freely, and if she never learns to communicate, her silence becomes a form of emotional absence, even if her feelings are real. This is where emotional maturity becomes essential because real connection requires courage. The courage to be seen, to risk rejection, and to face uncomfortable conversations. If she truly loves you, there will eventually be signs of movement toward clarity, even if slow. But if avoidance remains constant, it teaches you an important lesson about what kind of love you are experiencing. Loving someone does not excuse emotional neglect, and understanding her fears should not mean abandoning your own needs for reassurance, presence, and honesty. Sometimes the most powerful response is not chasing or confronting aggressively, but choosing self-respect, emotional stability, and calm boundaries, because love that is meant to stay will find its way back when it feels safe, and love that cannot meet you halfway reveals its limits through silence, helping you decide whether to wait with awareness or walk away with peace. In the third part of this journey, the focus shifts from understanding her behavior to understanding yourself, because prolonged avoidance, no matter how much love may exist, starts shaping your emotions, thoughts, and sense of self in ways that are easy to overlook. You may begin to lower your expectations, make excuses for inconsistency, or tell yourself that patience alone will eventually fix everything. But love should not require you to constantly doubt your worth or silence your own needs. When someone avoids you while claiming to care, it often places you in a waiting position, emotionally paused, hoping for clarity that never fully arrives. And over time, this can drain your confidence and create anxiety that has nothing to do with who you are and everything to do with the uncertainty you're living in. This is why it becomes essential to recognize that love without emotional availability is incomplete, because feelings alone do not build relationships. Communication, effort, and mutual presence do. Sometimes her avoidance is a silent message that she is not ready to meet you at the depth you deserve, even if her feelings are real, and readiness matters just as much as love. At this stage, the most important question is no longer, why is she avoiding me? But how does this situation make me feel, and is it healthy for me? Because self-awareness is the point where emotional power begins to return to you. Choosing not to chase, not to demand, and not to emotionally overinvest in someone who remains distant is not coldness. It is self-respect. If you decide to communicate, clarity should be simple and honest, not emotional bargaining, because mature communication creates either understanding or closure, both of which are healthier than endless guessing. And if you choose to step back, it does not mean you failed or gave up too early. It means you recognize that love should feel secure, not confusing. Sometimes the lesson in loving someone who avoids you is not about winning their heart, but about learning to protect your own, understanding that real love grows where both people feel safe enough to show up fully, and anything less teaches you what you should never settle for again. Love that hides behind avoidance eventually forces a choice, because emotional limbo is not a place where healthy connection can survive. At some point, you must decide whether you are waiting for her potential or honoring your present reality. And this decision is not about pressure or ultimatums, but about emotional honesty with yourself. If she truly loves you, there will come a moment when her fear begins to lose to her feelings, when avoidance slowly turns into effort, consistency, and openness. Because love that wants to stay learns how to face discomfort rather than run from it. But if time passes and nothing changes, her silence becomes an answer, not about her feelings, but about her capacity to show up, and capacity is something you cannot fix for another person. This is where acceptance replaces hope, not in a bitter way, but in a grounded, peaceful one, where you stop interpreting mixed signals and start trusting patterns instead. Choosing to walk away from emotional unavailability is not a loss, even though it feels like one at first, because you are choosing stability over uncertainty and self-respect over longing. Walking away does not erase the love you felt, it simply places it where it belongs, in your experience, not your future. Sometimes distance is the only language that creates clarity, both for you and for her, because when you stop chasing, you allow the truth to surface naturally. If she returns with accountability and emotional openness, you can decide from a place of strength rather than need, and if she does not, you gain the freedom to build a connection that does not require decoding silence. The deepest lesson in loving someone who avoids you is understanding that real love feels calm, reciprocal, and secure, not anxious, confusing, or one-sided. And when you finally choose yourself, you don't lose love. You make space for the kind of love that chooses you back without fear.